Sounds fancy. All right, today we're going to be going over relationships in Rails. And as requested by, was it music? We're going to be doing a baking. Was that music or Tiffany? I cannot remember. Well, we're doing a baking relationship here, which is a relationship I'm very comfortable with because I love food. All righty, what are our data types going to be? How about we have items? So maybe we have
like user and pastries.
Yeah, let's go pastry. Yeah, let's call it pastry. I'm gonna make this bigger. So we are going to have pastry. Actually, I'm gonna put it right at the top. I lied, right there. Pastry. Nice. We are going to have, what else?
Calories, maybe?
Oh, calories is a good thing. But that would probably be a property of the pastry, right? Wow, that was tongue twister.
What about
A meal?
like a type? Oh, no, that, yeah.
If we have a meal would probably have many different pastry items.
We do customer?
Let's do customers. I'm going to put customers over here. Actually, first let's just write them out in text. So we're going to have pastry. We're going to have customers. What else are we going to have?
Like a bakery?
I tab on day one, there'd be more work than to work it.
Oh, okay. Pastry, customer, what was the other one?
Bakery or?
The bakery would be like the whole database, right? It would be where everything is kind of happening. Maybe we could do like, well, let me ask this. Can a pastry have many customers?
Not unless everyone takes a bite.
I'm not asking about an instance of pastry. Well, yeah, can an instance of pastry have many customers? I would say it can, right? I can have one customer buy an eclair and then have another customer buy an eclair, right? Or is it eclair? I don't know, whatever.
But those are two different pastries, right?
They're actually, well, I would call it the same pastry. It's just, different instances of that pastry. Which, to be fair, an instance of pastry in this case would be like a donut or an eclair. It wouldn't be like a specific donut. It would be like a type of donut or a type of pastry. So that's kind of what I would do here. And then you could have a customer, and then maybe a customer can have many donuts through a purchase. So maybe we will say, and you can only purchase one item at a time, but if you want, we can make that a little more complex. So here we're going to say we have a purchase. So let's do something like this, a purchase. And then here we'll have a customer. Boop, boop, boop. Whoa, wrong one. I can do that. Customer. So a specific customer can have many pastries by having many purchases. So I could purchase an eclair, I could purchase a donut, I could purchase, how about we consider this a menu item? Pastry like a menu item. That way we don't get it confused with oh, does a donut here represent a specific donut? No, it actually represents like an item on the menu. Does that make a little bit more sense there?
No, awesome. Because you have the class of donut. But could you make a subclass and then have it then create one instance of a donut if you wanted to do it that way? Could you make another sub?
I think you could, but it'd be kind of complicated because then you'd have to say that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could just have a whatchamacallit. I don't know. I got to think about that for a second. If you have a pastry. So I feel like it doesn't really make sense. The concept of subclass makes more sense in the context of raw object-oriented programming and not so much in the context of data modeling. if that makes sense. I would say that what you would want is you'd probably want to take a pastry and then put like maybe you'd want to put like a type on it or a name, and then we could say pastry type. I don't know a lot about pastries, but maybe you could be like eclair, and then pastry type would be like a donut.
So like an instance of the pastry class could be a donut, and that would just like represent like all the donuts. But if
That
you
would
made-
represent the donut menu item.
right. So, but if you made a subclass of donut, then you could make individual donut instances.
If you made a subclass of donut, well, the way that I would track the amount of donuts, right? Like let's say I wanted to track a specific donut, what I would probably do is do it through a purchase. So if a customer purchases a donut, then that's one donut. So like let's say, okay, customer 1 buys a donut. Now that customer has purchased a donut, a singular donut, and that purchase kind of represents that, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. If you wanted to make it to where like a customer has a whole receipt of items, what you could do, and we could definitely do this, is we could make a receipt or something like that. So I could go here and say, let's do a receipt. And then let's talk about what these lines would look like though. So one pastry has many customers through purchases. So we've done this type of thing many of times. Bam, 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 bam. And then what we can say is one receipt has many purchases. So that way our receipt is going to have like maybe a bunch of different purchases on it. Awesome. Cool. So now let's start thinking about how we can, what our data types are going to look like, right? And I am going to do this real quick because I don't like that box. Let's get rid of these guys. I want to make a bigger box. Oh, wrong one. All right, so now we're going to call this a receipt. Bam. So let's start talking about what a purchase is going to have. Well, a purchase will probably have a pastry, right? What else will it have?
A customer.
Customer. What else will it have?
A receipt.
Yep. So this could all just be the receipt. That could be all that we have. What do each of these data types have to be?
Reference.
References is the word I'm going to use. Only because that's the Rails word that you use. And rake. It's just, in general, it's just active record. Okay, cool. Then let's talk about what our other attributes are going to be. So what is pastry going to have? I liked calories. That's a good one, right? So we could say that that's an integer. What else are we going to have?
A price.
Price. Love that. That's probably going to be a float, right?
And a name.
Name. What's that data type going to be?
String.
Cool. Anything else we want to add to that? I think that's good for now. All right, customer. What's a customer going to have?
Name.
Name. Cool. And the name is going to be a string. What's receipt going to have?
Purchase.
So question. Which one references? So did we put a purchase on here? Why? Why didn't we put a purchase on pastry?
Because the purchase will have many pastries.
Right, because to establish this relationship, the data type that is the many always references the data type that is the one, and that's how the relationship is established, not vice versa. So a purchase will reference a receipt. So we don't actually need to have a receipt as a, I'm sorry, we actually don't need to have a purchase as a data type on receipt. Any questions on that? This kind of goes to our single source of truth, right? Since the purchase is containing the relationship there, we don't need to double that relationship by putting it on the receipt. Otherwise, we have multiple sources of truth, and it becomes harder to handle our database. Awesome. We are now going to get into some friggin' coding. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm in my throwaway. We're gonna make a new app, Rails new, and what are we gonna call it? Let's call it Pastry Central. Pastry. No, we're gonna call it whatever. I'm just calling it Pastries galore. Pastries galore. And then am I forgetting anything on here?
Dash API.
And what does that do? Anybody know what dash API does? I'll give you. Whoops, sorry. Go for it.
It gets rid of the view.
Yep. Rails is a model view controller, which means that it's trying to do front end stuff, and we're just saying nope, don't do front end stuff. We'll do front end stuff on our own later. Awesome. So now we're gonna open up our pastries galore. Cool. All right, so let's look at our database. We're gonna have this guy, which is referencing all three of these. Which table might we want to create first? Or which tables, or whatever the answer to that question might be.
Pastries receipt customer.
Yep, we want to create these first because this has to reference them. So how can you reference it if you didn't create them yet? So I always like to think like that, just think about that order. So let's start with pastry. What am I going to do to create a pastry model?
We do Rails G resources. And then pastry.
Okay. And then what?
And what were our attributes again?
Yep, calories, price, and name. So I'm going to just separate them, calories, price, and name. And what data type is calories?
An integer.
Yep. What data type is price? Whoops.
Oh, a float.
I would do a float. And what data type is name?
Name's a string, but you don't have to write it out.
Yep, you don't have to, it's implicit. So now what does this do? Let's go ahead and press enter and see all the stuff that it did.
Has it always been resources? Has it not been resource? It's always been plural?
It might be resource. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Cool. I was like freaking out there. I was like,
Yeah, believe it or not, we fuck up sometimes. Especially me. Cool, let's look at all the stuff that this created. What's this?
Migration.
So that's my migration file. So we created a migration file. What's this?
The model, so the class.
Yep, so that's the class. We need that, right? Remember that from Active Record. These we can ignore because they're test. What is this?
Our controller.
Cool, so we made a controller. What's this? So this is saying in our route file, I think root could work too. I'm not sure, but I've never heard anybody call it a router.
Router.
I think root could work. Like if you're talking about like, I don't know, like Route 66. I've just never heard anybody call it that. I'm gonna start calling it that for fun. Cool. So what it did was it added this line of code into our routes file. So we got all that shit for free. That is some Rails shit right there. We got all that for free. Pretty great. Cool. Let's look at our database. The thing we're most concerned about right now is our migration. And by the way, you notice how I typed in pastry and it came up with pastries? That's called the Rails pluralizer. Let's say I go into my console for a second. I think I can do something like this just to check to see what the plural version of a word is. Let's say I type in pastry. I think I could type in dot pluralize. Yep. And then it gives you the pluralization of that. I think I can go, here's an interesting one. You can test out some words. Like let's try one that I've ran into before. Pokemon. Oh, Pokemons. We know that's not right, us 90s kids. Well, if you are a 90s kid, we know that's wrong, but whatever. Rails can be wrong sometimes too. If you're ever curious about how that's going to work, you know, you could do that in here. Do hero. That's a weird one. Heroes. This is wrong, isn't it? Shouldn't it be? It is wrong, right?
It's wrong.
Yeah.
What about deer?
Deer? Man.
No way it works.
I bet it's going to do deers. Yep.
You idiot.
Moose. I don't know. You can play around with that, obviously. I do got to check fish, though. Oh, shit!
That's surprising.
I did not expect that. I did not expect that. All right. So we're out of the that guy right there. So we're creating our pastries. Awesome. Does this look good to everybody? It looks good to me. I don't know about y'all.
John.
But it's always good to gut check. All right. We're going to now make, instead of pastry, we're going to make our next one. Let's make receipt. Did I spell receipt right? I don't know. Let's see.
No.
Oh, yeah, it's EI.
I after E except after C. I before E except after C. Yeah.
Yep. All right. And what data types is it going to have? What attributes? I'm going to say nothing. I don't even think it needs anything. It's literally just a container for the other thing. Cool. Then we're going to have, let's see, what else? Customer. And a customer is just going to have a name. Yeah. Awesome. So I have all these, and then we just have one more to do. And that is a purchase. What is a purchase going to have?
It's going to reference your customers and your pastries.
Receipt. Also, well, we'll start with what you said. Customer references. Pastry references. And then we also need to add receipt, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And that should do the trick. All right, now let's migrate this. Rails DB migrate. Kablamo! We have a schema. See if it looks like what we wanted. Okay, so we got purchases, and that's referencing our receipts, our pastries, and our customers. We have receipts with nothing really in it. It looks like we added the foreign keys here, so that looks like it's working. And then we have customers. Cool. Looks like everything's working nicely. So let's go ahead and seed some stuff. All right, first we're going to do our, I'm not going to worry about the destroy all. I'm going to use the replant. So we'll do that default. Let's create some stuff. Customer.create. Let's do that. And as I always do, because workflow habits are important, I'm going to split my screen. On this side, I'm going to open up my schema. And now I can kind of look, okay, what does my customer have? So customer is going to have a name. And we'll say that that's Tiffany. And that's it. Cool. Let's make a few customers. Why not, right? Boom. Tiffany. Jazzy Johnny. Great, so we got some customers. We'll see if that seeds right. No idea if it will. We're also going to do, what's the next thing we want to seed? And why don't we actually make these names? So I'm going to go Tiffany equals. That'll be easier to do afterwards. Johnny equals. Marcos equals. All right, what's next? Oops. Probably want to seed some pastries, right? So let's make an eclair equals pastry.create. Whoops. Pastry.create. And let's go. Well, we're going to have calories. Oh, I messed something up here. Why did no one stop me for that? That looked weird.
Why are we also curly
What?
braces?
You can add the curly braces. That's fine. That's actually what's happening under the hood. This is what I don't like about Rails, is that Rails, Ruby in general, will do a bunch of stuff by default. One of the things that it does is if you don't put anything and it's expecting a hash, then it will just assume that it is a hash that you're putting in. But you could also be explicit about it this way. How much time? How are we looking on time? I could give you all a quick explanation since all we're supposed to go over is Rails today. So let's go. The whole concept of this. Whoops. Oh, I don't know why I went all over the place. Okay, we're in Ruby. Cool. The whole concept of this is, let's say I make a create function. Let's call. Whoops. Let's say, actually, let's do a class, pastry, and what we are going to say here is, let's do our initialize method just like from before. Def initialize, let's say params. Let's call this params hash, actually. And this is the trippy part here. So I'm going to kind of do this the shitty way, which is okay. Let's do adder. I think I could do it like this. Adder reader. Can I do this? Params hash? I think I could do that. Let me check this. At. So this is going to seem a little weird, but it's actually not much different from what you already know how to do. So let's say instead of passing in, do you remember how before we would be like, pastry, let's say I have a pastry with a name and a age, or not an age, a name and like calories or whatever, right? What I used to have to do was be like maybe Claire equals pastry, and then be like, I have to know the order. So it would be like Eclair, and then I would put in like 777 calories, and then let's just do name and calories for now. Well, now what I could do, since my input argument is a whole hash, I could just say name equals that. And I could just say age, not age. I keep saying age. Calories equals that. And I think, I'm not sure if this will work exactly. Let's figure it out. I think I could type in puts eclair.name. No, see, that won't work. What I have to do, undefined method params hash.
You need to put two, yeah.
Yeah, you do a colon there.
An undefined method pastry.
Pastry.new or
Yep,
create.
that's all that was. It's new. And then now it's saying name. Yeah, so what I could do is eclair and then here, name. There's a fancier way of doing this. Wait, eclair dot params hash and then name. Point is that now what I've done is I've created something where I can go in this guy and now I can input a whole shit ton of parameters, right? I could be like taste equals delicious, whatever. And now I can do the same thing with taste. And if you think about that, this is a much more flexible class than if I were to have like, oh, here you have to put name, here you have to put calories, and here you have to put taste. So like it's much more flexible if you're basing it off of parameters that you put in. There's a fancier way of doing it to where you can pull out like eclair.taste, but it's more complicated than I care to show y'all right now. But I just want you to understand that that is exactly what's happening under the hood here. You're saying I'm instantiating this customer with a hash, and this hash has key value pairs, and those key value pairs you can sort of look at like the arguments to the function. And that way you have more flexibility. And if you think about that, that makes sense because all your different like models that you have are always going to have very different attributes on them, right? Maybe I have a spaceship and it's going to have a value of like total amount of launch fuel, right? That is a variable name that you would never expect. So it's like, now I can go here and be like, oh, launch fuel. And then I can input some value, right? And it's more flexible. It's just the thing that's confusing about Ruby in general is Ruby implies a bunch of stuff. So that means that this works even though it's less explicit. In fact, if you wanted to go even less explicit, you could even do that and it should still run. I just think that it's way more confusing to read that. I think it's actually harder to read even though there's less stuff on the screen, personally. So let's create some calories. I'm going to leave this just to see if it breaks. I'm going to create some calories. I'm going to create some pastries. So an eclair is going to have 777 calories, and then it also needs to have a price and a name. Its price is going to be $7.77, and it is going to, its name is obviously going to be eclair. Great. I'll make one called Halloween cookie. Bam. And a Halloween cookie is going to be 13,666. That's a lot of calories. There we go. No, 136 calories. Price is going to be $1.33.
John, two things.
Yep.
Halloween has an A, and then
Does, oh, you're right.
can calories be a float because it We specified that it was.
Yep, you're right. Good call. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. We have Halloween cookie. Let's make one more. What's y'all's favorite pastry?
Danish.
Danish. What kind of Danish?
I like cherry Danishes.
Cherry Danish.
I fucks with some cherry Danishes.
Cool. Price is gonna be $2.50. South Park. Name. Call it Cherry Danish. Awesome. Then we have to make some purchases, right? So that means a purchase is tying together, although we have to also create a receipt. So let's call one receipt, I don't know, let's call it Marcos order. Marcos order. And we're going to say that this is a receipt. We literally just have to do this. Right? Let's do, who else do we have? Tiffany and Johnny. Tiffany order, and then we're going to say, did I say John? Johnny order. Awesome. And this might look really weird, but it should make sense in a second. Now we have to create our purchases, right? So now we have to say, okay, what is Marcos going to order? So this is why we have multiple purchases, right? So I could say purchase.create, and we will say, we're going to have what on here? Customer ID. So we're going to go, oops. Customer ID, and we'll go Marcos.id. We can say, what are you going to buy first? The first thing that you're going to buy, I would say, would be a, I don't know, you'll buy a Halloween cookie. Halloween cookie, whoops. This will be pastry.id, right? This is a pretty complicated database for us as far as what we're concerned now, but hopefully the concept will be driven home a little bit. And then we're also going to have what? What else does it need?
Needs a
Receipt.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a .id after Halloween cookie?
I do. Sorry. Receipt is going to equal Marcos order dot receipt. Whoops, dot ID. And this should be dot ID.
And receipt underscore ID.
Receipt. Oh, yeah. Now, to be fair, the reason why I was actually fucking that up is because you could also do this in Rails. This is something you could do in Rails there. You could actually just reference the whole object. That doesn't work in Active Record, but it works in Rails for some reason. But we'll leave it with the ID because I think that's what y'all are used to. We'll test it after, see if we can get it to work. So we got purchase.create, and maybe we want him to buy 2 Halloween cookies and a Danish, right? So at this point, he will be the only person who bought anything, and now we will have had 2 Halloween cookies and a Danish. So let's run this seeds file first to see where we're at. Rails db seed, and I'm just going to type in replant for good habit. And we fucked something up. This happens all the time, especially with me. Receipt. Yep. That was bound to happen, right? And this time we didn't fuck something up. Great. So I'm going to type in Rails C. And now I can fuck around with my database, which is fantastic. So maybe I want to look up, well, I could look up purchase.all. Awesome, I have all my purchases. Now, let's say I want to say customer.all. Let's find Marcos. So Marcos was the which customer? He was the second customer. So I'm going to go customer, or the third customer? Yeah, he's the third customer. So I'm going to do customer.all, and he should be at the second index there. Cool, so that's Marcos. If I were to take him and look for his purchases, right? Do you think this will work? It broke. Why did it break? Anybody know why that broke? What did I forget to do that establishes the relationships?
Oh, did you do the has many? On
Exactly what we're missing. So we need to edit our models to reflect these relationships. So I'm going to go into, oh shit, where is it? App, models, and let's start with purchase. Oh, well, that was already done for us. It belongs to customer, pastry, and receipt. So now, what is receipt missing? Let's look at our database again. A receipt has many what?
Purchases.
Yep, a receipt has many purchases. So has many purchases. And then what else does it have many of?
As many customers do purchases.
Nice. What else does it have many of?
As many pastries through purchases.
Nice. Love it. Whoops. Cool. That looks good to me. So now what I should be able to do, I'm going to type in reload here because we changed some stuff. So if I type in reload and then an exclamation mark, it reloads the console. Now I should be able to type in receipt dot first and then let's say dot customer. Now here it's going to be customers. This is one weird thing about this database is really a receipt will belong to one customer, not to many. So I'm not actually sure how we would change that to make that better, but I think we could make that better at some point. I think I know what you would do. I think what you would actually probably want to do is take your I think you'd realistically want your purchases to have like I think what you would want is this. We messed this up. I take full responsibility. I think you'd want your receipt to have many purchases, and then also you'd want one customer to have many receipts. So it looks kind of weird. And I think to fix this, let's not fix it right now. We can go, if you want a follow-up lesson, we can fix it then. For now, it's just going to look kind of weird because one customer can have many receipts. I'm sorry, one receipt can belong to many customers. The rest should look pretty good. So anyways, then let's give that a save. Let's go into our customer class. What is a customer going to have according to the database that we set up?
purchases?
So a customer is going to have many, so has many purchases. What else is it going to have a lot of?
Pastries through purchases.
Yep. What else is it going to have?
Receipts through purchases.
Nice. Give that a save, and then let's go to our pastry. What is a pastry going to have?
Purchases.
Okay. Anything else?
It'll have many customers through purchases.
Nice. Anything else?
Receipts.
I do think that there's a better way to model this database for the record. I'll make a fix to that. I'm sure, and this is like honestly a really good thing to realize, is that I hit a point where I realized that this was actually doing something weird. In retrospect, it's not actually that hard to change, and I didn't put in that much work getting it up to this point. So it's really not that hard for me to change now. Now, if I was halfway through a project, it would be a lot harder for me to change because I might have already, like, for example, in my CLI app, already built a bunch of stuff off of the active record commands that were there, right? So it's just really important to think database design is one of those things that you want to get right early on. So I could fudge it and make all of this work, but there is going to be some weird behavior. Like really a receipt should only belong to one customer. And I probably should fix that now. But I'm going to save that for another lesson so that way we can get to some controller stuff today. Does that make sense? But we can check to see what our relationships look like right now by going like, okay, maybe I want to check out my first receipt. Let's see my customers. Oh, receipt.first.customers. Cool. So to me, that's a little weird that it comes up that way, but it's okay. Then I can go ahead and do like, maybe I want to see my pastry.first.customers. So nobody bought the first pastry. What about pastry indexed at 2? Whoops. .all. Nice. So we got something back. And now, are you kind of seeing how I could like play a little bit with this and kind of figure out what's going on? Rails C is great for playing around with your data and figuring out what's going on. I highly recommend using your console to your advantage. And now, let's say I make a change to my file. What am I going to do to explore my database without having to reload this? What can I do? Or without having to like close out of this and open it up?
Reload exclamation point.
Pretty nifty, right? Awesome. Sweet. So how do I get this stuff? We have 10 minutes. How do I get this stuff on show pages? How do I get this to actually create an endpoint, or an endpoint being like a back-end website where I could actually look at this data? How do I get that to work?
You have to add your methods in your controller, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's go to my controller. And let's just make an index method for all of these. So I'm going to say def index, and here we could say pastries equals pastries.all. And what do I do next with the pastries that I have? Oh, this is wrong. the pastry class. What do I do next? What function takes information and sends it to my endpoint?
You need to render JSON.
So the render function, right, will take whatever I put in here and send it out. And we want to render a JSON object. But just to sort of fuck around for a second and see what this render function is doing, I think I'm just going to put a string in here and see what happens. I'm going to say, hello, I am the index method for a pastries controller. All right. How do I start my server up?
Rails S.
Do y'all want to know the John way of doing Rails S? So I always do this. I always say Rails S, and then you could specify a port. I always like to start it on 9,000 so it doesn't default to 3,000. And that way I always know 9,000 is my backend database. That's what I like to do. There's no pressure on how you do that. And just to re-clarify, it's Rails S, and then a -P flag, -P for port, and then 9,000. So I'm doing this, and now I'm running on localhost 9,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my localhost 9,000, see if that's working. Bam, it's working. And I'm going to go to my pastries endpoint. And nothing was rendered. Did I save this? I'm wondering if I have to do something like a string. I wonder if that works. I'm curious. Nope. Well, we're just going to render the JSON. I think this will actually work because JSON is a string. Yep, that works. Anyways, so the render function, just actually like a lot of the other ones that we did, is also accepting a hash. That's why this key value pair is there, right? So the way that I like to look at it is like this. We have this object inside of our render function, and the render function takes in this hash, and if it's a JSON pair, then it renders it like JSON. Another one that you will commonly see is status. So I'm just going to say, I always forget the statuses that are available. So if you go to like Rails statuses, status codes, I wouldn't stress too much about this. This is something that's going to come in more important in mod 3, but just to show you, let's do success. Okay, let's do 200. So I think I can say, let's go okay. So I can use this, and this represents a status code of 200. All right. So now, just to show you kind of what this does, and don't internalize it too much, don't stress about it, but just to give you an idea, we rendered this as a JSON string, which a JSON string, if it's like not a nested data structure, it just literally is just a string. But it can parse through a nested data structure. Then inside of here, we should be able to go to our network tab and see like, okay, I sent back a status of, I don't know why that says 300. There should be somewhere where it says 200. I'm curious if okay is anywhere else. I don't know, anyways. You can send status codes through. Oh, weird. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know there's a way to control the status code that gets sent through, but let's not stress out too much about it. Point is, you can render different stuff. I think you could do CSV too. But anyways, whatever. The render is a function that takes in a hash. I've spent too long on that. But now what we're going to do is we want to render what? Whoops. I'm gonna expand it out for readability. What JSON object do we want to return?
Pastries.
Pastries. Great. So now we do that. Cool. Get rid of this. So now we have all of our pastries there. How would I make a show page? Has anybody done a show page yet?
Yeah.
Show.
Nice. What goes here?
Pastry, singular.
Pastry.find.
Okay.
Params ID.
What is params?
Parameter.
Where's params coming from? Let's get a binding.pry in here. Well, a bybug, because that comes with Rails. We're going to do this real quick. Ready? How do I hit this show point? How do I hit this method? How do I activate that? Does anybody know?
You have to give it a an index.
Give what an index?
Your local host, like, so at the end of it, you would put /1.
Looks like it's working because I'm stuck. So you're right. And also, if I look at my server, we hit it. Okay. Why don't I just look at what params is here? Because I don't really know, so fuck it. Huh. So it looks like params is an object, because all that's an object, right? What are they giving me here? They're giving me the controller. So they're saying the controller that we're on is the pastries controller. They're saying the action is show. That's pretty cool. So that's where it's being sent to. And then they're also saying that the ID equals 1. How did they figure out what the ID was?
It was part of the query parameters in the URL that you sent.
Exactly. Well, it's not exactly a query parameter. This is actually a different name. Let me look at what it's called. It's called a something section. Query parameters is a little bit different. It's called a dynamic segment is what this is. It's saying after the pastries endpoint, what is the thing after this /? Query params would actually look a little bit more like this. If this were a query params thing, it would look a little bit more like this. We'll deal with these later. ID equals 1. That's what that would look like. Query params are just a different, you could think of all these as like some string, and then some computer knows how to take that string and parse out, oh, this is some valuable information. And it's REST convention that this dynamic segment from an endpoint, let's say we have a pastries endpoint, this dynamic segment here will be the ID of the thing that you want to get. It doesn't just work for our APIs, it works for all REST APIs. So let's actually go to that Rick and Morty API just so I can show you. Docs. Go to this characters guy here. Bam. So here I have my character endpoint, which for us it would be characters endpoint. That's just how Rails by default does it. And then if I hit / and let's say Rick Sanchez is an ID of 1, it's going to do a show page for the first one. So this is a REST thing. This is not just, oh, this is how we're teaching you. This is what REST convention is. Cool. So this params object that gets sent in populates itself based off of what goes in there. Now what we could do, I believe, is also add query params to that. I'm not sure. How does that work? I kind of forgot how it looks. I think you can go ID equals 1 and that should still work. Yep. So I think we can go in here and let's just try it and play around with it for a second. I don't know why my thing isn't ending. Oh, I don't know. Running my port again, and this time we're going to say, this is more of what query params would be. That did not work. Wonder.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you not have to specify ID in the params?
So when you're doing its REST convention, that you should just be able to go like that. It uses a dynamic segment instead of query params. But you can create query params. Have y'all downloaded Postman yet? So if you ever want to check what those query params might look like, and I think when you do, it depends on the method that you're using. Hang on a second. I need to go to Postman to, did that work? Okay, cool. So it depends on the method that you're using, what it winds up actually going to. So if you're doing a show page, you're doing a GET request, right? What it actually wants is just that /1. Later on, when we get to post requests, you're going to say like, let's go make a new one, new request. We'll call it post request. Bake. Cool. I don't know why this won't save. What the hell? Okay, whatever. So we're gonna go to, we gotta get the URL, which is here. Bam. So we just want pastries. When I do a GET request, if I do a / and then the ID, that's REST convention to go to the show page. However, later on, which we're not doing yet, when you do a post request, you probably will get to that today. When you do a post request, I need to go to pastries, and this would be like, let's say I want to create a new pastry. I have to send that information in this URL. So maybe I want to create a pastry with like a name of, I don't know, donut thing, right? And then I want to have a, what were our other thing? Calories would be 800 and whatever. This is what query params are here. It's saying, I want this key value pair. I want where it's like, okay, the name is going to be donut thing and calories equals 800. This is the convention for sending it through. Now, we haven't done a create request yet, but just to kind of show you how that will work, let's go to our back end. And now instead of doing this, we're going to actually create a create method, just so I could show you where query params is going to come in. Create, and I am going to hit a buy bug in here. So let's exit out of this, exit that. How do I get out of this? Control D, Control C. Okay, that worked. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my server again, and we want to hit this create request. So that means I have to send a post request, which I can't just do through my browser. Our browser always sends, like Google browser always sends GET requests. Postman allows us to send all of the different ones. So maybe we want name, calories, and I don't know, what's another one that we have in there? What's the last item? We have name, calories, and price.
Price.
Yep. So we're going to say price is, it's going to be an expensive donut. This is going to be a $10. This is Voodoo Donuts right here. Okay. I am going to send this in, and do you see how it's stuck? That's because when I do that resources, right, in my routes, this is actually somewhere under the hood saying post, and then it gets that URL path, which is pastries, to, and then here we're going to say the pastries controller and the create method. Although I think these are supposed to be single quotes, and that's why it's yelling at me. And also this is supposed to be a comma there. Somewhere under the hood it's doing that, and the somewhere, not very deep, is right here. That's what resources does. So let's go ahead and actually see what is going on by looking at our by bug. So right now we are stuck in the create function. The thing that I want to show y'all, what is params? Oh, huh. It's almost like when I go to my postman, right? Name donut thing. That came through right here, right? All I did was send a post request to this URL, and now encoded in this URL, I have this object inside of here. This hash inside of here. So now if I go to params and I look up name, right? I get my donut thing. Now if I go to params and I look up calories, I get the calories that I wanted. My suggestion to all of you would be to play around with that for a little bit. Just tinker with it. Try to make a post request with query params and see what you can get out of it. I'm going to go because I got to take my lunch. I got to prep for my lesson coming up too. So, but yeah, do any of it before I go, do any of y'all have any questions? Any burning, itching questions? Nobody? Nobody's confused by someone's got to be confused a little bit by the params thing. That's a lie. Someone's lying. Everybody's lying or someone's lying. Nobody has questions on params because that confused the hell out of me when I learned it.
I think I just need to read documentation and then I'll have questions.
Oh man, you're a documentation reader. That's what I love to hear. Good stuff. All right. Well, y'all have a great day.
All right, John.
Thanks,
Have a
John.
good one,
Thanks,
bro.
John.
Later.